So today we're going to do from beginning to end a standard pour. This is for beginners, so I am going to be using craft paints, which are significantly cheaper to buy than like the professional level paints that I will use for paintings that I sell. And we are going to use a small canvas. This one is an 8 by 10. And so being a smaller canvas, and I want to use like 5 colors, I really don't need a ton of paint of each one. In the beginning, I was always using just a ton of paint, and I was losing so much paint, and it would just drive me crazy. I mean, you don't want to like not have enough, because that can cause problems too. So right now I'm just using purple, bright blue, light pink, and a tin color by Craft Smart, which I got at Michael's, and then I'm using Artist Loft Flow acrylic paint in white, which I also got from Michael's, which is like almost gone. Now I always use kind of a lot of white because I like the contrast in my paintings. Now I just mixed up my little pouring medium here with my water and my glue all. We're going to use glue all this time. And I always kind of test a spot first to make sure the pouring medium looks like a good consistency. And I kind of like pour it in until it like covers my paint color. And it's like pretty much white on top. So I'm going to be kind of probably talking. I'll be trying to talk and fill the silence because there's going to be a lot of me mixing. Like you'll kind of see just how much mixing goes into this because you want to make sure that your colors, their paints, each color is like the same kind of consistency as far as the flow goes. So try to hold this one up. So see, it's just like running really nicely. That's still a little thick for me, so I may add a little bit of water. And I'm probably gonna need, as I'm eyeing this up, I may need a little bit more paint. And I usually use the big tongue depressor sticks, so these sticks are a little funny for me. I haven't really worked with the craft paints recently, so I am interested to see the consistency, how the cells come out, what it looks like dry. Because, you know, they're cheaper paint. And I am kind of a firm believer of you get what you pay for. That is kind of like a motto of mine. But, you know, I do realize too that you don't need to break the bank to be making some beautiful artwork here. So we're going to see how these craft paints do. I hope they do really well. I'm excited about this. So I'm just adding a little bit more paint color. And with the craft paints too, they are going to be thinner by nature. So, you know, your more expensive paints are going to be a lot thicker. So I find you don't need to add as much pouring medium. You don't need to, I mean, I always add pouring medium, but you don't need to add maybe as much water. The metallics with the Craft Smart, I always notice are a bit thicker. I mean, you can see this is just like hardly coming off my stick. So I am gonna add just some plain spring water. Mix it up. White, I think my theory is because it's so opaque, it's just always thick. So I always end up adding, I feel, like a ton of pouring medium and water to my whites. Sometimes I'll have 2 cups of white, kind of depending on the look I want. I do have other containers that I have white in that I'll kind of do in more advanced videos, but this one is just very, very, very beginner. And you can see it's not even falling off my stick. It's just, well, and you know, again, this is kind of like cheaper paint. It's a huge bottle, so I've had this thing a long time. So it's not the newest of paints. I'm sure if it was a little newer, it probably would be flowing a little better for me, but c'est la vie. So I hope, you know, if you guys have any questions, please comment. I mean, I am just so pumped to be doing this channel, and I hope it can help some people get into art, because, you know, I was the type of person where I don't do very lifelike things. I've done a couple portraits. I'm kind of starting now to do more faces, like kind of fantasy, like whimsical, like not picture perfect portraits, kind of more imaginative ones. And I'm having a lot of fun with that, but I never did a lot of still life or realism. I did a lot of abstract art, and this is just such a fun way. So like, as you'll see, a lot of this is just mixing, and you know, these craft paints are pretty thin, but when I've got my thick professional paints, I mean, I'm standing here for 20 minutes. So now I'm going to add my silicone, and I am going to use the silicone lubricant for cars. Blaster, it looks like, is the brand. I got this big can at Lowe's. That's where I got that can. And now with my silicone, I'm only going to add like 1 or 2 drops to like 2 or 3 of my colors. I always put some in the white. And then I just kind of like swish it around a little to get it in there just a little bit. I don't hardcore mix it in. That's not necessary. And now with this canvas, because it's so small, we're only going to put all the paint in 1 cup. Sometimes I do 2. We're just going to do 1. So I'm going to start with a little bit of white on the bottom. Oops, I've got a little white in my blue there. That's okay. Some purple. Some pink next to that. I just want to say, you know, when you're first getting into this, I would like really stress about my color placement as I put it in the cup here. And I have done so many different variations of how I put the paint in, the color combinations I use, if they're opaque or transparent, and on and on and on and on and on. But, you know, I have just found that, especially starting out, and if you're just using craft paint, it's really not that big of a deal. Like, you can get into color composition and all of that stuff later. You know, if I could just encourage the newcomer out there, the beginner, to just get comfortable with mixing, how the paints are moving, your silicone, the products that you're using. Now with this one, because we're just using 1 cup, I'm gonna put the canvas on top and flip it. So this is a flip cup technique. I've kind of done it off center, as you see. You can do it right in the middle. I just kind of prefer to do it off center. And now with these cups, I do tend to just throw them out, especially if they're pretty much empty like this. I was rinsing a lot of my cups, but then I was afraid of what I was putting down the drain and what that could be doing to the environment. So I'm trying to be a little bit more cautious and I guess conscious of what I'm doing with that. So I'm just kind of letting it seep down here. I'm watching the colors come out of the cup. Usually I try to leave a little bit left over of each color so I can kind of fill the edges. But we'll see how this goes here. All right. Move it up just a little bit. Beautiful. And I'm just kind of getting the rest of the paint out here. So I kind of let it set for like a couple seconds, see where it's going to go on its own. And see, I don't like to move it around a ton, because the more you kind of like move it, you start to lose, the colors kind of start to get muddy. And especially with like craft paint, I just find you want to kind of be really careful about that. So as you can see here, I'm using like the leftover solid colors. I'm gonna fill my edges, and I'll still kind of tilt it and play with it a little bit, but I have white here and oh, and there's some of my paint's really starting to go over the edge because I mentioned in my other video, my table is really, like really, I mean, it's not terribly off, but it's not great. It's not very level. Okay, so I am gonna torch it right now. You can just see those cells pop out. I'm gonna kind of watch it a little bit here. And if I like how the cells are forming, I really try to not move it much after that because the more you move it around, it will alter how your cells look. It'll stretch them out, you'll lose them a little bit. See, like we're getting some really nice cells up here. So I don't wanna, I like that. I kinda wanna bring it a little bit more that way, but I don't wanna lose, you know, I don't wanna lose them. So it is really kind of like a watch where they're going kind of a deal. Because the painting, you know, you guys could go out and use the exact same colors I'm using, follow everything I just did to a T, and your painting would still come out completely different. That's the beauty of doing these flow paintings. And I just call them flow paintings. I know people call them pouring or fluid. I don't know why I call them flow. I just like that, I guess. So I'm actually very impressed right now about how these cells are turning out. The colors in general, just because it is craft paint. I haven't used craft paint in a very long time. So I'll just show you real quick so you can see I'm losing some paint. It's coming over my sides. That's it on the drip table. And when I first started out, this all would have been like a puddle. Just like way too much paint, or there would have been nothing because I would have not had enough. So it is flowing over my sides right now pretty nicely. I don't want it to flow too much because again, it'll pull as this paint flows over the side, it will pull that paint off. And sometimes you'll lose your cells. So because I know that this table is uneven, I usually move my painting to a dry rack on the floor, which is more level, to let it dry for a little bit, and then I will come back and check it out. So I am gonna move that right now. I'm just gonna check my edges. You can use this tool right here to kind of scoop off paint that is falling off the painting to kind of cover your edges if you like that. On some paintings, I don't do that because I kind of like the look of it, like that drippy look around the side. So sometimes I won't, I'll just let it drip, but sometimes I do like it to just cover the entire canvas and look a little bit more unified. And I do go along the edge. It's kind of hard to do on a small painting like this, but when it's bigger and it goes over the edges, you can just kind of run. Sometimes I run my finger along, but if you're just kind of continually getting that paint coming off that's dripping, it won't pull the rest of the paint off the canvas. You know, I do like the cells. I like that I can see some of the whites giving some contrast, but you know, time will tell. We'll kind of set this aside, I'll let it dry, and we'll come back and see how it looks. So here it is in the process of drying. It's still a little wet in the middle. It looks good in my opinion. I would probably still list this one for sale. It's got a lot of colors in it that people really like, the purple and the blue, and a little bit of pink. It's not one of my favorites, but for the craft paint we were using, I think it came out pretty darn well. You can see the edges are dry, the middle is still a little bit wet. All right, there it is.